So, have you ever wondered why some parts of Pakistan are so much wealthier than others? Is it really about who you are, or is it more about where you happen to live? Today, we're going to dig into the deep roots of inequality in Pakistan and try to figure out if its story is one of people or of place. All right, let's just jump right in with a simple, undeniable fact. If you look at any map of poverty or human development in Pakistan, a super clear pattern just jumps out at you. Inequality isn't random. It's practically written on the map itself. And that, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. Why? Why is wealth so packed into some areas while poverty is just so deeply stuck in others? Getting this right isn't just some academic debate. It has massive consequences for the country's politics and policies. So, to unpack all of this, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at Pakistan's geographic divide. Then, we'll explore a really common explanation that centers on ethnicity. After that, we'll look at it through a historical lens, test both of those theories out, and finally, check out some potential solutions that are rooted in the country's structure. Okay, first up, the geographic divide. This is where we start, with the cold, hard data. What's so interesting here is just how stark the picture is. You've got these clusters of low poverty, all centered around the GT road in north and central Punjab. Then you see pockets of moderate development up in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, places like the Hazara and Peshawar Valley. Karachi, of course, is this huge urban outlier down in Sindh. And then you have most of Balochistan, which is a massive zone of high poverty. This isn't just an opinion, this is what the data and the indexes tell us. And this quote from the author of our source material, Umair Javed, just nails it. He says that pretty much all the available data tells the same story. Social inequality and geography go hand in hand in Pakistan. So there you have it. The fact is established. Now let's talk about how people interpret that fact.
And that brings us to our second section, the ethnic explanation. This is a really common and politically charged narrative you hear all the time in Pakistan to explain this geographic divide.
So, what is the ethnic discrimination argument exactly? Well, it's the idea that these development patterns aren't an accident. It suggests that prejudice and biased attitudes basically drove development and economic growth in a way that intentionally favored certain ethnic groups over others. It frames the prosperity of some as a direct consequence of ethnic majoritarianism. And here's why that argument has so much power. Prejudice is a very real, lived experience for a lot of people, so this explanation really hits home. As this paraphrased quote suggests, in Pakistan, the struggles over class and inequality often get talked about through the language of ethnicity. It's emotional, it's deeply personal, and it's a huge force in politics. But is it the whole story? Section 3 offers us a different way to look at the exact same data, through a lens on history. This framework is called combined and uneven development. And the basic idea here is that the inequality we see today isn't necessarily about people's attitudes right now. Instead, it's about these long-standing historical legacies. It argues that different regions evolved in very different ways because of how states and markets were built over hundreds of years, and that's what created the gaps we see today. So let's trace this back. During the colonial era, the British poured a ton of investment into irrigation and grain markets, mostly along the GT road. After independence, the new Pakistani state pretty much continued those same patterns. Government jobs and military recruitment stayed concentrated in those areas. Karachi has a whole different story. It exploded thanks to migrant capital that kicked off a private sector boom. Meanwhile, a lot of other regions were plugged into the national economy, mostly as places to extract natural resources from. See? Totally different historical paths, creating totally different economies. So, it really boils down to this. The ethnic explanation says inequality is caused by who you are. The geographic or historical explanation says it's caused by where you are and the unique history of that place. Okay, so we've got two competing theories on the table. In Section 4, we're going to put them to the test. Which one actually fits the evidence better? And here's the big question that really challenges the ethnic-only theory. If your ethnicity is the main reason for your economic situation, shouldn't pretty much everyone in that ethnic group have similar outcomes, no matter where they live? Well, the data tells a very different story.
This table really breaks it down. First, look at the variation within ethnic groups. Pashtuns in Karachi can have totally different economic lives than Pashtuns in the newly merged districts. The article also points out that there isn't really a unified political identity of Punjabiyat. The privilege seems to be tied to the geographic region of Punjab, not the ethnicity itself. And finally, history shows that Baloch people have assimilated in parts of Punjab for centuries, which suggests that ethnicity isn't some permanent wall you can't get over.
And this is a really important distinction the author makes.
This situation in Pakistan seems different from other types of discrimination you might see around the world, where your identity is the main factor, no matter where you go. Here, location seems to play a huge role in shaping your outcome.
Now, let's be absolutely clear about something. This does not mean prejudice isn't real. It absolutely is, and it has terrible consequences. It can prop up discriminatory policies and lead to awful racialized stereotypes. The argument here is just that prejudice might not be the root cause of the massive, large-scale developmental inequality we're looking at, even if it definitely makes the problem worse.
So, if the problem is baked into the geography and history of the country, what's the solution? That brings us to our final section, solutions in structure.
And what's really fascinating here is that the people who wrote Pakistan's 1973 constitution kind of seem to get this. They didn't create job quotas based on what language you spoke or your ethnicity. They based them on geography. They seem to recognize that the real disadvantage was tied to your location.
So building on that same logic, the article puts forward two big structural fixes. First, empower the Senate. Because the Senate gives every province equal representation, no matter how big its population, strengthening it would help balance out political power. Second, give real resources to local governments. We saw those huge development gaps even within the same province, right? Well, empowering local bodies is the key to tackling those very specific local problems. So the big takeaway here is that this kind of approach goes way beyond just telling people to be nicer to each other. It's about actually re-engineering the political and administrative system to fix the fundamental problem of place-based inequality. And this isn't some fringe idea, it has powerful advocates. As Rafiullah Kakar is quoted saying in the article, fixing the federal structure isn't just a minor adjustment, it's absolutely essential for tackling this deep-seated issue.
And that leaves us with a really big question to chew on. The analysis we've just gone through suggests that the best path forward might not just be about changing attitudes, but about fundamentally redrawing the political and economic map of the country. So, is it about changing minds or changing maps? It's definitely something to think about.